course.
All right. First three things I want to talk about before here. Trainings, as you know, you guys have access to free trainings. Uh, for example, if you're starting out or refresher course or if a new employee joining your team, PriceLabs Basics, very useful. We'll be talking also, for example, today about market dashboards. We have this as a training. You can scan this QR code. I think there's a link as well in the chat as we speak to register for trainings. It's very useful. It's free. Just use that, and it's available in 6 or 7 languages, I think, as well. Next slide.
A deal.
Another thing, another resource, also free, that you will find in the product. So if you go into PriceLabs, the tool itself, you go on the right-hand side, you click on your profile, you'll see something called training, especially if you're a host. If you have like, 1 to 5, 10 listings, that's going to be super useful for you. We have self-paced free courses to help you out again. Just a refresher. So we're talking about this. And the last thing I want to plug here, because I know if you here, you want to know more Price Labs, we have this fantastic weekly podcast, right? Every week, we're there, and for example, every 5 weeks we cover the U.S. market with a new market data. First, at what we see, we talk about also other episodes talk about revenue strategies. We interview people, so we try to make it as live as possible. Once again, the link is in chat here, but just search for Rev Labs on Spotify, Apple iTunes, even YouTube. You will find us. All right, I think that was it for my plugs. I
The
hope.
plugs. Good deal. Cool. I'll go over just a quick agenda of kind of what we're going to be covering today. As you all know, PriceLabs has kind of revamped the maps and all of those fun things, which are located in quite a few different kind of areas inside of the tool. So we're going to be covering kind of a wide variety of things today. First, we can go ahead and start getting kind of those foundational things in place, right? So when you're selecting your base price and when you are looking at the comps that are important to you, making sure that we're filtering that to listings that matter, right? After that, once we start going into analytics a little bit more and a lot of kind of your own data management and looking at comps and things like that, we are going to be able to define your neighborhood a little bit better. So we'll go into the neighborhood data tab and learn how to do that a little bit more. Slightly associated with that, we're going to include hotels in the hotel data tab as well. So we can pop in, take a look at hotels that are near you, get some good insight and info from those folks. And then we're going to go to one of my favorite topics, which is market dashboards. This is where the map is going to be super duper useful. We're going to go from being kind of more broad neighborhood data to super specific comp sets and super specific data that can be used in a lot of really fun ways. And then finally, we're going to go ahead and talk about the Revenue Estimator Pro tool, which is very cool. This is another one of those things that's totally revamped with the new map system, and we'll kind of touch on some of the new things there. That's another one of the market research tools like market dashboards. So it'll be fun to kind of pop in there and see all of the fun things that you can do. So with that, let me hop into the tool and get started. Thibaut, do you want to talk about the base price helper tool? Let me pop in here. Okay, cool. So I've just selected a random
Oh,
uh, demo account for myself. So just so everybody knows, this isn't real. I don't actually have a place in Pigeon Forge, even though I wish I did. But we can take a look. This is a really kind of robust area with a lot of comps and a lot of kind of places to look at. So yeah, you can just pop into your calendar, into whichever listing you want to use, and then pop into the Help Me Choose a Base Price tool to get to this.
yeah, exactly. And before we do this, quick things, Leila, who are you?
Oh yeah, we forgot about that. Yes, I'm Layla. I'm a solutions consultant here at PriceLabs. So what that means is I typically work with some of our larger clients to kind of help them utilize the tool as best as possible. I'm kind of there to help optimize and leverage the tool as much as possible and all of those things. I'm sure some of you folks have also seen me host a couple of our webinars, like the 101 and the 201. Um, so if you have heard my voice or seen my face, it's likely there. I didn't want to pitch myself too much when you were talking about the training sessions because I do a lot of those, which is fun. But yeah, I'm located in the US in Indiana. So a slightly kind of boring part of the Midwest, but I love it. And yeah, I've been at PriceLabs for just about a year now. So
Fantastic. And I'm Thibaut, I'm the head of product marketing here, and very happy to be here and try to share in kind of a training education with you guys. Uh, just also so we get started, sorry about that. So can you just go to the hotel data tab right now? I want to quickly talk about the why we're doing this, and I think the just I want to show the map in hotel data tab. That's it, just to illustrate something, and I will
Mhm.
indeed go to the best price help. I just want to make a uh, so um, hopefully you can see here. So why maps? Why do we have a whole session again? More than 600, 700 people registered for this because obviously, Price Labs, the algorithm does a lot. The pricing algorithm does a lot, right? For many people, actually, you know, once you set up your base price, your min stay restrictions, you're good in a way. Like the algorithm will take care of a lot. But some people may want to um, take a step and maybe refine some reports we have. We'll see neighborhood data, we'll see market dashboard. And there, when you log in straight into the product, you'll see that we look at your performance, for example, against the market. And how we define a market here is based on a default setting in a way. But maybe you want to change the what the market is here or the comp set in a way. We'll talk about this later, but you want to define how you change how the market is. And that's where maps come in. They're a great tool for you to do this in a very handy way. This we knew you've always had in a way, but that's we want to reiterate this. And what we've done though, we've made the maps just first more beautiful. If you zoom in a bit, if you mind, you'll see that first they just look better. One, two, we also improve the gradients, different colors. We try to also to improve the contrast in the sense that we know that 20% of the population have some kind of visual impairment. So we try to make the contrast better, and we also try to we also try to have more information. So the goal is that these tools are not only for you to see things, but also take decisions, and for example, select things and add them. So in a nutshell, that's what we try to do. We try to make them more beautiful, they load faster, and they enable you to have more information and take more action. That's my whole pitch of why we did this whole work, and I hope you guys can see it. All right, going
Yes,
back to base price help indeed.
good deal. Let me pop in here then. Okay, awesome.
All right.
And let me full screen this so folks can see a little bit better.
Thanks. I was about to ask because Susan says that she's on a laptop and small, so indeed perfect. So that's the base price help tool. As you may know, for example, when you get started, you need to set up your base price. It's very important. So one of the big decisions you need to take when you're starting with PriceLabs. And we have a tool that suggests for you the base price. But for example, um, depending on geography where you are. Imagine you're on a coast. You want to say, well, you know what's relevant for me is only the shore, the lake, the beach side, or here we are in the mountains, for example. And maybe you want to say, you know what's relevant for me is, I think we're in Pigeon Forge, aren't we?
We
Yeah,
are,
here we
yes.
go. I can see Dollywood, right? Or what is that?
Yeah,
There we go.
love that place.
Maybe you think, you know what, I need for when I calculate my base price, I need to compare myself against the two to three bedroom properties that are in certain regions. So maybe you need to draw here with the tool here, you can draw a certain slice of the market that you think is relevant. And once you do that, the best price help recommendation is going to be recalculated, basically, right? Um, so we'll take that into account. for the market based, we'll take that into account basically. Again, so it was very quick because there's way more to see, for example, in um, neighborhood data. We'll see this with Leila, but just to give you an insight, even in this tool, which you use to get started, is important. Also, if you're a host, do try to come back to the base price help tool every 3 months at least, I would say. Just check maybe there's new listings in your area, there's maybe new trends. You really want to make sure you just look at this. Again, we try to make the map better. And this tool that enables you to draw maps is very, very powerful now. That's it for me on this tool. Any question, again, go to the Q&A chat.
Perfect. Good deal. So yeah, that's a really good kind of lead into the neighborhood data tab. So a lot of the information that is super valuable inside of PriceLabs is kind of market specific data, right? So while the tool allows you, excuse me, to do a lot of fun things like to, you know, assume these, or excuse me, to have PriceLabs kind of take over and do a lot for you, it's also really, really nice to be able to have just a bunch of data on competitors, right? And so comparing yourself to the market or looking at specific folks around you, whatever the case is, that's one of my favorite bits of Price Labs, honestly. And the neighborhood data is something that I'm absolutely obsessed with. So if you pop into the neighborhood data tab, one of the things that you can do is pop down here into the competitor map, which is going to be super similar to that base price helper tool that we just saw. It's the area around you and it's the folks that you are being compared to, right? And as Thibaut said, a lot of the time it's not necessarily like the most perfect comparison to just say geographically everything close to me, right? Sometimes it's really, really important to pop in and define that a little bit more and to fine tune that a little bit more. For example, here, like this is a Dollywood location. I don't necessarily want to compare myself maybe to these folks that are further out. As Thibaut said, if you're beachside and you have a waterfront view, you may not want to compare yourself to folks who are a little bit more inland. All of those sorts of things are really, really important. Even in big cities, there's like ley lines of like, hey, below this street is a completely different market than north of that street, right? So all of those things are super duper important. As you can see, the competitor calendar, or excuse me, the competitor map in here has gotten a big revamp. So one of the first things that's really, really useful from the jump is seeing all of your comps or all of the market compared in a way that's like at a glance very easy to see who's pricing super high or who's pricing super low. So I can see right around me there's like clusters of maybe more expensive properties that may be, you know, a perfect location to walk to Dollywood or whatnot. And that may be the folks who I want to compare myself to. And you can also see those folks that are kind of on the outskirts a little bit more are maybe not priced as high. They're in these kind of lower sections, right? So at a glance, you can see a ton of information. And then you can also pop in here and use this in a really similar way to kind of what we talked about with the help me choose a base price tool, except here you're going to get into the details a little bit more granularly. So you've got your competitor calendar down here, and that allows you to see a bunch of really cool stuff. If you don't use the competitor calendar, I absolutely recommend it. Recommend it. There's a bunch of really interesting things. You can compare your cleaning fee to the folks around you. You can compare service fees and then daily rates and occupancies. So stuff like that is really, really valuable, especially if you're maybe in like a newer location and aren't 100% sure of where to price yourself or what if what you're doing is right or what your cleaning fee should be, right? So if you pop in here, you can use the map here and zoom in a smidge. And I'm going to say, you know, I think that I'm really comparable to something like this. So I'm going to go ahead and hover over. I can see at a glance, it's in the red, which means it's a little bit more expensive, right? You can then also see a couple of fun things. So you can see the bedroom count, the average price, the minimum stay, and the number of folks it sleeps. So a bunch of really good information to at a glance tell you, hey, is this kind of a valuable comp of mine or not? In addition to that, if you click on the link here, you'll be taken to their Airbnb page. So you're able to see in a little bit more detail if they're a valuable comp. You can go through photos and do all of those things. And let's say I've analyzed this and I think it's a perfect fit for me. I'm going to go ahead and add it to my comp calendar here. And you can do that with a couple of more. So let me pop in and just do a couple real quick. Let's do this one.
And what's
Add
cool,
comp
the one you're
calendar.
adding, they turn into a kind of like a tick or pin, right? I can better see which one I have.
Exactly.
That's cool.
Yeah, spot on. You can see at a glance, so you don't have to keep double clicking them. And if one pops up down here and you don't like let's say, for example, one was out of commission for a section of the year, right? You'd see NA across the board. So you could then easily pop over here and say, hey, this one's ticked. That means it's one of the ones below. Let me untick this one because it's not a very good one. So yeah, once you've selected a couple of comps in the area, you can then pop in down here and look at some really, really cool information and some cool details about the comp you've selected from up here super duper quickly. You can also view info as a chart instead if you're a more charts than data kind of person. That's totally fine as well. So yeah, having the map revamped is super duper
Yeah.
helpful. It makes this a little bit easier, a little bit more smooth, and a little bit more fun, I'd say.
Yeah, exactly. And the colors are nice. And again, as you said, right, the gradients, the colors we have for the average price, it's just, I think it pops up more, right? It's much easier to see the
100%.
zones with the higher prices, lower prices. So I hope it helps.
Exactly.
Um, Also, anticipating a few questions we have, Leila, it's going to be for you to take probably during market dashboard. People say, hey, I want to select maybe competitors. I also have a hot tub or not. So way more amenities. We'll be talking about this because this happens in market dashboard where you have way more, let's say, items or things you can for which you can create a market, you can define your own market, and then actually you can import into neighborhood data. Don't want to make it too complicated, but here basically you are already able, with a map, as we saw, to refine the definition we're using of a market. A point I need to also make, that's for, as Leila said, you want to see things, you want to see your competitors that is not affecting, they're not affecting the way the dynamic pricing tool is calculating your prices. Right, it's not affecting the way, so you can go ahead and play and change the definition. Rest assured, that's not going to be impacting your dynamic pricing. Right.
That is a really, really good point to make, Devo. I feel like I have a lot of folks oftentimes kind of popping in and saying, "Hey, I've selected these 10 comps. Why isn't it changing my price, or why aren't I matching them specifically, or whatnot?" So yeah, that's a very, very good point, and I feel like it also leads us to a good thing to mention about the hotel data tab. Tebow is going to talk about this a little bit more, but you do have the option once you kind of start playing around in PriceLabs more, to go ahead and make PriceLabs consider hotel data a little bit more than neighborhood data. And with that, we can pop in and use the comps you've selected on the hotel data tab. Excuse me, the hotel comps you've selected on the hotel data tab as your actual comps. So that's the one kind of where you do have some say in it, right? When you're a short-term rental and you're looking at other short-term rentals, PriceLabs is going to do its own thing and look at what we define as your hyper local market. Excuse me. If you are leaning more towards wanting hotel data, if you're a boutique hotel, a general hotel, an apart hotel, any of those things, right? You do have a little bit more say, right? So if you, we can delve into that a little bit deeper, but that is kind of a caveat that I wanted to mention. Yeah, good deal. Timo, did you have any other questions you wanted to hit before we delve deeper into hotel data?
Yeah, and just want to say something around this as well, is that obviously you may be one of our customers, you know, that runs, you're operating a hotel or maybe an apart hotel. Obviously, hotel data is important to you, but as well, for example, in my case, I have a property that's a one bedroom house, and I can tell you in a vacation market, I can tell you I compete directly with the hotels. So I do look, even though I got a short-term rental, I do look at the hotel data tab, and I know which hotels I'm competing with in terms of price and area. So I always look at the pricing as well because I'm like, well, they're smart. They have revenue managers, so maybe they know some stuff. Also, I know that sometimes, not every time, I'm not directly competing on pricing. But in terms of occupancy, it's also very interesting for me to know, you know what, they're full. So maybe I'm the only solution out there. So I don't need to underprice something. So that's how we can think as well, hotel data tab, even if you're not a hotel, that could be relevant to you. So let's look how to change that concept. Again, to change that concept without having to change the table, but let's do it graphically with a very cool map. We studied this one again. I don't want to get too long on this one because same principles. Again, exactly as Leila is showing here. If I hover over one hotel, I get information such as, for example, how far it is from me. As I said, it's important in my case. What's interesting to me as well, because in my case, I got a sort of a high-end property in a way. Here, you also have, for example, the score it has on Booking.com, right? You know, Booking.com is rating properties on a scale of 10. Here it's a 8.9 out of 10, so it means it's pretty good. It's okay. As you may know, anything below 8.0 on Booking.com is not great, quite frankly. So as a guest, don't book anything below 8.0. But also, frankly, if you're comparing yourself, you say, I want to compare myself with the high quality ones. That's also a trick I'm giving you here. And as again, as we did for the previous screen, you could click on the link and get on booking.com to again examine the property if you need to. Yeah, that's pretty much it on this. Oh yeah, something I want to say as well. The map also and the prices adapts to, for example, lengths of stay, right? Maybe you want to go one night by default or 2 nights. We're just making sure again the pricing here it's more geared towards hotels, right? So you can understand. But yeah, that's the otherwise exactly the same thing we've seen for the neighborhood data tab.
Yeah, exactly. Spot on. And I feel like both are used super duper well together. We do have a little spiel that I do about neighborhood data and the hotel data in the trainings, so I'll plug that again. But yeah, I think that using both together is especially helpful regardless of if you're a short-term rental or a hotel. Um, I mean, market data is market data, right? Trends are really similar between the two, even if they're not going to be exactly in line with each other, right? So that's a super duper helpful thing to have, I think. But yeah, that leads me to speaking of market data and all of those fun things. The next thing that I kind of would like to touch on is in the market research tab. It's going to be the market dashboards. I've already got these preloaded over here, so I'll pop into this tab. So, market dashboards, I'm sure a lot of you know, are an integral part of PriceLabs. They're something that I highly, highly recommend. Um, they are really similar kind of to what Thibaut had mentioned before. They're like really similar to the neighborhood data, but they give you a whole lot more agency and a lot more ability to kind of filter and create comp sets and get into the nitty gritty, right? So if we pop in here, there's a couple of things that you can do. So when you go to add new dashboard, you can go in and use one of the pre-made PriceLabs dashboards. So if you go to an area that's really popular, for example, like Pigeon Forge, you'll see that there's a pre-built one here, right? Where our data science team has gone in and selected, this is Pigeon Forge. These are the really important lines to kind of distinguish Pigeon Forge from the rest of the area. If you'd like, you can just pop in and use a pre-built one if they are available. And you can see on the map, really easy to tell what's going to be in there, really easy to see how many comps there are, all of those things. Additionally, you do have the option to go in and create your own market dashboard instead. So let's say this kind of pre-made Dollywood or Pigeon Forge one isn't for me. I want to go ahead and do like 10,000 listings instead, and I'd like to do a custom area. Let's go ahead and do let's do this tool. You can go ahead and select super duper easily what area you think is, more important, or the area that you'd like to primarily focus on. You can also quickly see how many listings are in that area and how much data you're going to get. So, really, really intuitive, really, really quick and easy, hopefully. And then, depending on how many listings you're pulling, it does sometimes take a minute to pull 10,000 listings worth of data, right? So, if you use a pre made one, those are usually available almost instantly. They take just a couple of seconds to load. Whereas if you select kind of a custom area and do one of the larger listing levels, it does take a minute. So I've pre-made these. This is the Pigeon Forge general kind of one. And
And
we can take a
they,
look here.
wait, it's loading. Couple of questions from the side. Um, so obviously a market dashboard. So we saw neighborhood data
Mhm.
that comes with dynamic pricing, right? You're paying for dynamic pricing, you get neighborhood data. Am I right to believe that market dashboard is like an add-on? I need to go to market research, I think, at the top, and I will find there this, and I need, as you saw, I can create them, and there I will pay a monthly subscription, right?
Yes, exactly. So this is a separate tool outside of like your typical dynamic pricing subscription. Depending on the size of, the report that you're pulling, they do vary a little bit in pricing. If you're able to pop in and select an area, it'll tell you exactly how many listings are in that area and exactly how much a subscription to use that comp set, or excuse me, use that market dashboard will cost. So, as if you use one of the smaller ones, it's I believe 19.99 a month, and then going up to the larger ones, it's 39.99 if you're using 10,000 um, listings.
And
But
quickly,
there's
why would you use market dashboard on top of neighborhood data? It's neighborhood data. You show me, wow, Leila, it's fantastic. I can refine my view there. I can do a few things. Why would I need market dashboards?
absolutely, that's a super question. So this is going to be kind of more market uh, data in summation, right? So neighborhood data lets you pop in and look at, a specific neighborhood around you, a couple of the listings around you, and then it allows you to use that map setting to go in and look at like one by one comparison, right? Whereas this will allow you to go in and filter generalized data in a really, really quick and easy way. So if you don't mind, I'll show you just a couple of quick things here. One of the first things that you can do is change, bedroom counts and things like that for what you're defining as your market and apply that filter pretty quickly. On top of that, so this is like a very generalized any bedroom count in Pigeon Forge, and we're looking at, yeah, here is all of the different bedroom counts and all of those things sourced from Airbnb, right? So you can pop in here and at a glance see, hey, this is general market data for this whole comp set, all bajillion of the listings, right? And then what this allows you to do is pop in and create comp sets that are just like smaller markets, basically. And you can go in and get all of these details and then some for those comp sets that you've created. So I know that we're going to harp on the maps in just a sec, but so that's the first filter that you can do, right? So let me pop in here and just say geographically, I want to look here in specific. This limits the comp set down to a much smaller area, 576 listings. And then what this also allows you to do in a very, very cool way is to filter these listings a little bit further. So you can pop in here and say, hey, I actually want to look at only listings that have at least, let's do like a 4.0. I could just type it. Let's do a 4.0 review, star rating, excuse me, and have at least one review. Um, Even doing that filters out about 100 folks. So really, really quick and easy way. You can also go in and if you're more of a midterm rental, this is one of my favorite tools to use. If you wanted to pop in here and say, hey, I'm actually looking for, well, I guess this general area doesn't have it, but typically you could pop in here and say, hey, I want to look at data for 30 plus day stays, right? And that gives you some really, really good insight on this very specific comp set versus going in and like manually going through one by one. So let me go ahead and we'll do one night and we'll do one other amenity filter. Let's do hot tub. That's an easy one. Okay, cool. So filtering down to hot tub, that leaves us with 352 listings. Let's go ahead and do this. And now if I save this comp set, let's call it test one. I'm oh, select all, sorry, and test one and generate comp set, confirm real quick. You can now pop in here and look at that created comp sets data as well. So let's do that and you'll see all of that upload or excuse me, update super duper quick and you'll get a bunch of really, really good insights. this is kind of the general reason that you'd use market dashboards, right? Is to look at market data in a little bit more of a refined way.
If I may, in a drop down, and that's answering a question, in drop down I also saw Verbo. So does it mean, isn't it, that I can choose either Airbnb or Verbo as a source of data here, right?
Yes, exactly. And you can always double check which source you're using here on the site. So if you are in an area that doesn't necessarily use Airbnb too much, instead of creating that comp set on Airbnb, or excuse me, creating that comp set with Airbnb data, you can go ahead and start out with VRBO, and you will likely, of course, have really, oh, let me pop back in. This may be because it's a pre-made one and I've been doing a lot to it. But in general, you can change the source to VRBO, and then do the same sort of things. Use the same sort of filters. I mean, I guess filters vary a little bit between VRBO and Airbnb, but you can filter them down the same way, right? And then create a comp set that is going to give you a whole lot of really, really good information, and a lot of really, really specific information, which is nice.
I like the way you summed it because in a way we saw this new again, this map looks so cool. I love the
It
the colors, I love
does.
the rendering. I don't even think my car has such a good map. Maybe I should start navigating with PriceLabs open to go to destinations. But jokes aside, I really like exactly what you summed up, right? We use the maps in two ways here, right? First, you create my overall market dashboard, which is like sort of the canvas on which you can be working, and then use the map again to create comp sets across this market, right? I can create as many concepts as I want, which are different views in a way of that very market. So, and once again, you really showed how to use the map to do that, or you can explore a bit more. But that's really I want to show that it's really, really important how you can see how the map comes in time and again to refine the view I have, and it's refining the data. So you have this interaction between what I do on the map and what's happening in the tables and the reports.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm going to actually go back to the slightly larger dashboard that I've created. Do. Let me pop in here. Just because I did a 10,000 listing one, so I kind of want to show you, um, with that, how kind of fine-tuned and important it is. So one of the really cool things that Thibaut had mentioned is we can do as many comp sets as you'd like, really. So if you are a property manager in a specific area, like let's say around the Pigeon Forge area, and you've got a couple of cabins up in the mountains, and then, a couple of places on the strip down in Gatlinburg, right? Those are going to be way different. But one cool thing is if you pick one of these, market dashboards that's a little bit larger and kind of all encompassing, you can use the same market dashboard for a bunch of different comp sets, right? So let's say, again, same position. I've got, some cabins and things up in the mountains that are not necessarily the same competitors as like downtown Gatlinburg or downtown Pigeon Forge, right? You can pop in here at a super easy way. Again, same market dashboard, but you'll be popping in here and saying, hey, actually, let me create one comp set that's this area up here initially. So 400 listings. You can then go in down here and go through those filters the same way that we did, and that'll be one comp set. You can then use this comp set specifically in neighborhood data and go through and use, one of the cool things. Let me show you real quick over here. So the all of the future prices and occupancy things can be done in kind of a generalized neighborhood data way, or you can go in and use one of your market dashboards instead. So if you want to compare yourself, or excuse me, your pricing specifically to cabins in the area and specifically to cabins with a hot tub, right? That's going to be super duper useful to pop in here and do that way, right? So yeah, this is again one of the larger kind of listing polls, right? We've got like 10,000 plus listing, or excuse me, around 10,000 listings in the Pigeon Forge area. So yeah, first thing I want to do is highlight the mountainside where I've got cabins. And I'm going to go ahead and maybe just save this geographically and say cabins in the mountains. And I'll generate this comp set. And oh, I keep forgetting to select all. There we go. Boom. one comp set to look at. And then I can pop in here super duper easily and do the same sort of thing. Let's delete selected area. And now I'm going to create a different comp set for, Gatlinburg. And I'm going to zoom in here and say, hey, I want very specifically these ones right here. So I will go in and again, just boop, 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 use this super helpful tool. And yeah, as easy as that. 257 listings in the area. Again, you can pop in here and filter those down a little bit if you want, or you can just use geographically those ones that you see there. Oh, comp set Gatlinburg and save, confirm, and done. Um, we tried to, excuse me, make this a little bit more intuitive and a little bit more user friendly. And I think that it's done a super good job. If you wanted to, you can do the same sort of things that you can do in that neighborhood data tab where you can get super kind of refined and go in and hover and see, hey, these ones are making X amount per night. Typically, their occupancy is this. If that helps you kind of go through and pop in to define what area you want to look at, right? The color coordination is also super helpful in that way. You can pop in and see, hey, I really want to compare myself to these really expensive ones or this bundle of expensive ones here. Whatever, makes the most sense to you in whatever way you kind of visualize that. It's hopefully super duper easy. But I of course, am a little biased.
All right. And I think this couple of, going to go back to the Q&A maybe for more information about the market dashboard. Do you want to pop into the Revenue Estimator Pro?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go into
So same thing, we're going to be talking, as you saw, Leila just clicked on market research, where you have these additional tools that do require another subscription. I quickly want to show Revenue Estimator Pro. If you don't know, basically the idea of Revenue Estimator Pro is, for example, imagine you want to you're investing into your property, right? Somewhere in a market. You all you want to know all you want to know. You need basically to have an idea of how much money you're gonna be making. You maybe don't know, you want to know a bit more about the seasonality. You want to know what you could be daily rate. That's important if you're going to get a mortgage. Or imagine you are a property manager talking to an owner somewhere, and with this owner, you want to, give them a very nice projection. Actually, this all this that you see, you can download with a nice PDF in your Illustrator Pro, even put your logo on this to convince them to work with you. So it's a very good tool to actually get people to work with you. Again, and that's in a way here, what Leila did, she entered I think you entered I didn't see where it was. Sorry about that because I was
Oh, yes. Let me pop in. I just did a random address in
all right.
around me.
All right. There we
But
go.
yeah, you could do that same thing here. Name the estimate, type in an address, just a
Yeah.
couple of quick questions and super duper easy.
Exactly, right. So, and already in a way, the way Leila did this, she already picked an address and maybe a number of bedrooms and the rest. But and that gives me already a good idea of, let's say, how this property is faring against the rest of the market. So, for example, here you have a range for the estimated rental revenue for this property. Uh, but maybe just as we did for market dashboard, and say, yes, that's true, but I want to refine that estimate. And maybe by using the map, so clicking, I think on advanced filters, probably I want to say I'm okay with this, but I want to have a same thing, a different geography. I want to only look at certain part of the city. And I know you probably know the area better than me.
A bit. So yeah, let's say we don't want to look at downtown Indy. That's too suburban, or excuse me, too urban for my suburban home. So let's filter that way. And then yeah, this should auto adjust. Pop in and select all, apply filter, and a slight change. And it shows you that slight change, which is nice.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a quick one we just did, right? But exactly this, you want maybe to select here the properties and you or some other filters exactly, and you say, you know what, I want the ones that have a hot tub again. Not sure indie makes sense, but you again, and that's again enabling you for property you don't know anything about. You only have the address. So so in neighborhood data, for example, we were comparing the performance of a listing that we have against this market. Here, imagine you don't know anything, but that tool basically gives you a pretty good idea of what you could hope for in a way. And again, what the map brings, not just like shiny colors, it really enables you to pinpoint better, refine better the definition of the market that you care about. Maybe you say, you know what, I'm defining my competition as people with a 3 bedrooms. They need to have a great reviews and they need to have occupancy of at least 20%. This is how I, as a user, a property manager, this is how I am defining my relevant market. And that's how maybe I'm defining the relevant market for this property. And then I can go to the owner and say, look at the research I did. I compared your property against properties, for example, who have the similar amenities and maybe are in the same area and are performing really, really well. So you can see how really the map, the fact that the map now is more precise, has more information, really enables you, if you want to do more comparison. Now, maybe in your, again, as I said also at the beginning, that's not really affecting the algorithm, right? And for many people, you don't need to do all this. You don't need to do all this unless you have maybe a thirst for analytics. If your property manager, as I was explaining, obviously you maybe want to go further and analyze why not a new market dashboard. Here we saw with the Revenue Estimator Pro, you want to maybe give a report for an estimate to an owner. So this is the maps are really a tool for you to have now more information because you have each pin has more information and we take decisions that are good for analytics. But that's again, that's really for if you want all this. I hope it's making a difference. And just closing down because there's a question here, and maybe we can stop sharing it. But Shahid asked the question: what's the difference again between Revenue Estimator Pro and Market Dashboard? Well, Revenue Estimator Pro quickly is just really good if you know you have a property in mind, they have the exact address, and you want basically to build the market around this, and then compare the estimate occupancy salinity for this property against other properties geographically, and then can refine. Market dashboard, we sort of give you more a larger view, right? You saw Layla earlier, she could even go up to like 10,000 properties. So you have more in a way, you can go to 1,000 to 10,000 properties. In a way, you have more data on the market. And you can say, I want Airbnb data, I want variable data, and I want to create different views, which we call market sets. And so you can then even import these views into the rest of PriceLabs. For example, these views, you can use them in portfolio analytics. If you want to compare the performance of your portfolio against a certain view, a certain comp set of the market, you can see how, in that sense, Market Dashboard has way, way more data. It can even then make it appear, display it within the rest of the tool. Would it be a fair differentiation between the tools, Leila, you would say?
Absolutely. So another thing that comes to mind is just like the ability to get a bunch of really good data on top of kind of just generalized revenue metrics, right? So Revenue Estimator Pro is amazing when it comes to what you can kind of expect or kind of trends that you can see for revenue. And one of the cool things about market dashboards is it also gives you a lot of other kind of information. So things like cleaning fees, things like how long people are staying, a bunch of really, really good generalized market data on top of revenue as well, right? So we didn't really harp on that too much today, but if you scroll down, you can see so many charts and graphs and detailed accounts of um, just heaps of good information of your market, which is nice.
Thanks. Bum, bum, bum. Um, I'm looking at questions in the Q&A, I must say, and then I see that the team
They're
uh,
being pros. They've answered them all.
yeah, 25 questions responded again. That's pretty cool. I'm quickly going over any question. Feel free again, Leila, if you see a question that we like, because maybe not everybody has seen the questions. If you think there was a good question, a good answer you want to highlight, we can do this.
Good deal. Let
Uh,
me.
meanwhile, meanwhile, I'm looking at other questions we're having. Um, right, somebody was asking, for example, Myra was asking whether we I was back in neighborhood data, the data we were putting in, showing the map. Uh, Myra was asking whether that was only active listings, for example, active listings. And Arshdeep had a very precise answer saying like in the neighborhood data tab, we fetch the data for listings, which have been active in the last 6 months and also look to be active in the next 6 months. So I'm guessing at least one night open, right, in the next 6 months, for example. So that's how both in the past and in the future, right, in a way. That's how we define active in this case. Again, looking at questions. Um,
So I see one that was in the chat instead. Pam asked, "Is Market Dashboard really meant for property managers? Can't we, with just one property, do the same thing through neighborhood data?" Yeah, absolutely. So, neighborhood data is really, really good when you are able to go in and like kind of have the time to go in and one by one do things, right? So you'll want to go into each listing individually. You'll want to then go into maybe the comp calendar and do side by side comparisons in that way. If you do have just one property, that is usually a super duper easy way to go in and just kind of keep tabs on the market and keep tabs on specific comps, right? Market dashboards is going to be a little bit more useful for larger portfolios and for folks that want to get kind of generalized data for their entire market versus maybe comparing to a couple of comps that they have in mind, right? You absolutely can go ahead and spend some time in neighborhood data and get a lot of really similar information. It'll just kind of be more on like the one-on-one level or the day-to-day level versus big aggregated market data like the market dashboard provides. And then again, things like amenity filters and things like that. If you have the time to go in and look at like an Airbnb listing in specific and say, hey, this one does have a hot tub, I'm going to go ahead and add it to my comp set, or excuse me, to my comp calendar. That's a little bit easier again on the one by one kind of approach versus if you wanted to look at, everything in Gatlinburg or everything in Pigeon Forge or whatnot. So yeah, it's totally up to you how you'd like to use it. It's just a matter of kind of like dedication of time and what exactly you'd like to see, whether it's one-to-one data or generalized market data, if that makes sense.
yeah, and adding as well a question, I think it was a question, sorry, I lost your name. Yeah, Elaine was wondering whether, again, because normally we were looking at the question in Q&A, but I see there was a question in the chat as well, just like you going there. Elaine was asking whether people needed a subscription level to access the drawing tool. So probably, Elaine, I think you were looking at neighborhood data and neighborhood. So the drawing tool we showed you, it was in base price help, for example, market dashboard. Neighborhood data is a bit different, in the sense that neighborhood data basically kind of creates, if you want, a definition of the market by itself. It looks at the, I think, 250, 350 properties around you and selects them as part of the as your it's a default map around your property, right? Uh, you can, of course, you can change it a bit. If you go to the top of neighborhood data, you can click on, for example, you can say, I want, or maybe you can, do you mind, Leila, showing the neighborhood data again?
Absolutely. Give
I'm
me
trying
just
to
one
show,
second.
where you can change definition of what we take into account, like the bedroom count, for example. Um, so,
Good.
so I'm not trying to explain, you do not have this drawing tool in neighborhood data. Yet what you do have is what we're going to show now. We can still influence what's in there thanks to this button here, right on the top right. We can say I want the number of compare myself against a number only like 2 to 3 bedrooms, for example. Um, and I could even, if I wanted to, I think somebody had somebody was asking about markup markdowns. If I want to, I can even say, you know what, I want to add a markup markdown. Not sure it's going to be relevant here against prices for others. But anyway, here I could already say I want to. If you go to the map, I only look at, for example, 3 bedroom properties. I think. Hopefully.
Much less robust right now with just 3 bedrooms.
Right? So here, basically, what's happening, you don't have this tool because here we kind of say that's the one we have by default around your property, right? And this is why, again, some cases it's interesting. Some cases you may want to say, no, you know what, my definition of the market's way bigger. This is where you may want to use market dashboard in this case. I hope it's being clear again, a use case. What you
Yeah,
may.
exactly. This is neighborhood data is a 1v1 comparison. Really, you have to go in and select the comps themselves to see them in the comp calendar. And then yeah, market dashboards is you kind of getting to select the area, you getting to be a little bit more hands-on with that info versus picking, 10 listings to pop in and look at one by one info for, if that makes sense. I saw a quick question here. Da, 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 da. I think it's gone. He must have answered it. I had it. I thought that there was a good one, but it's disappeared. Um, Oh, Pat says, what upgrade gives you these new features? So this should be live inside of PriceLabs. The brand new map should be totally live. You guys should all be seeing it. The only thing that's kind of an additional subscription or an additional level is going to be those market research tools that we talked about towards the end. So market dashboards is an additional subscription, as well as Revenue Estimator Pro. So anything else that you've seen, any of the maps that we've looked at, the comp set, or excuse me, the comp maps, to help me choose a base price tool. All of that stuff should be updated and refreshed and looking cool for you already.
And as usual, right? We have no lock-in, right? So in this, I feel like a salesman, like a door to door. But what I meant to say is that honestly, maybe for the market dashboard, depending on who you are, maybe for example, like me, you are a nerd, data nerd, and I want to know everything about my market, even though I've got one property, I subscribe to it. But maybe I know of no clue. For example, you are interested in one market, maybe when you want to invest or your property manager, you're thinking about another market, maybe you just go to market dashboard, create the market once, use all data you want, you can even download data, and you stop the subscription, right? There's no lock-in. You could just use it for a month. So could basically pay for it for a month, if you will, and stop it, right? It's not like dynamic pricing, but obviously you need to subscribe all the time to get your price refreshed every day, year round. Here, it's more like one-off. You have to think what you want. In my case, I keep my market dashboard alive because I want to look at data, as well as I said, also import them then into the rest of the dynamic pricing tool to make some advanced comparison. So again, that's why I don't want you guys to feel like we pushing you towards it. Right? As we said, right, if really not everybody needs all this, right, do this refined stuff. Neighborhood data is free. It has a lot of stuff already for you guys. And again, as I said, you can just maybe try it out for 1 month and stop if you don't find any value in neighborhood in market dashboard. Right. I hope this is useful.
That spot on. One thing that I was just going to add. So one of the things that I typically am a fan of is using the market dashboard tool when you're in like a very niche situation, right? So comparing MTR's midterm rentals to STR's short-term rentals is not always like the the most apples to apples comparison, right? General trends can sometimes be the same, but if you are someone who is, for whatever reason, a midterm rental in a place where there's a lot of short-term rentals, it's really nice to just get some generalized data, even, right? So if you pop into market dashboards and use any of those filters, I'm just gonna do min stay of 28 nights. Yeah, 27 is fine. There's only 3 folks around me, so this maybe wasn't their best example, but, if you pop in and save this, just to show you real quick, MTR, um, let me do this just super fast. And let's look at that MTR data set. Cool. So I talked a little bit about some kind of generalized data, right? One of the things that's really different between MTRs and STRs is going to be like average price per night alone, right? Like that's a huge difference if you're renting out your unit for one night versus if you're forcing folks to stay at, 30 nights. So you can see average nightly rate drops by $33 a night, which is awesome once we filter down to that MTR group that I've created. And then in addition to that, so that's like one good thing to know right off the bat, right? You can see that once. You can use market dashboards once and see this is exactly what I needed to know, and that's that. And then you can see a lot of this really good market history and market summary stuff. This is again one of those things you can kind of see length of stay, right? The length of stay in this area is a specific um it's pretty consistent, right? All of those things are super duper useful to see even once, if you do choose to use the market dashboard subscription just once. So yeah, it's definitely valuable in a couple of ways, but definitely not necessary either.
We're almost at time. Just want to cover three more comments here. So,
Cool.
uh, Osman is asking, how can I use to check occupancy of potential deal? That's Revenue Estimator Pro. Revenue Estimator Pro will give you the potential occupancy even throughout every month of the year. That's where you want to go. Number two, Susan, thank you. Susan says she also has one property. She uses market dashboard extensively, and she's been able to increase her revenue by 15% by really handpicking her comp set there, right? On location, amenities, and the rest. So thanks a lot. And I want to answer questions. Again, somebody was asking whether the comp set they're using in neighborhood data is influencing the dynamic pricing tool. And the answer is no. It's no, right? That's why I was saying from the get-go, you don't need to do all this in a way because the algorithm is taking care of all the pricing thing. But if you want more analytics, if you care about your competitors, what they're doing, if you want to know more about even another market, this is where using all these maps tool are interesting. Or even just if you go back to neighborhood data, sometimes I just look at neighborhood data and I see the data there. It just helps me understand what decision the algorithm has taken and how I feel about it, right? So just again, hopefully it's useful. Um, we are at time. I want to close here by again thanking you. We are above. There's still 130 people here, so thank you so much for attending. Thank you, Rafal and Arjdeep, for answering the questions. Thank you, everyone, for the quality of your questions. I really like it. Hopefully, we talked about the trainings at the beginning. We have a training for market dashboard. We have a training as well. We touch upon neighborhood data. Do go to the trainings page on our website. You can really also, again, you will be able to ask your questions more. Um, and if you have questions about the pricings of different options, go to our website and the pricing page will help you. As we said, for example, market dashboard, it's an add-on, and it's depending on the size of market dashboard, you'll find this. Okay, and I will, I hope you saw that some things are loading faster. Market dashboards are loading faster. We made a lot of behind the scenes improvement over the last months to have things that look better, load faster, not just because it's neat, because it just helps you have more data, more insights, make the right decisions, right, in a way that's useful to you. This is being recorded. You get a link to this. I'm Thibaut. I'm closing off here on my side. Leila, what are your last words?
Thank you guys so much for the really good questions. As I've mentioned, I host a lot of these, and it's kind of boring when people aren't interactive. So thank you guys so much for getting the conversation flowing and asking really, really good questions. I had a blast, Eva. Thank you for having me. I'm yeah, a big fan of this. So
All right. And thank you all. And thank you all the way also Middle behind the scenes for organizing this event. And as usual, we talk to you next month for another event. Take care, everybody. Cheers.